Hey everybody, in today's video, I have some important updates regarding the news surrounding the increased fees to the H1B visa. In today's video, I have some good news to report. I think you're going to get some great value. So as always, make sure to stick around till the end. So let's jump right in. As many of you know, on September 19th, President Trump enacted a presidential proclamation which enacted a new $100,000 fee for certain H1B visa petitions. When this presidential proclamation was enacted, it sent shockwaves through the world of U.S. immigration. It created many questions and much hesitation. People were justifiably freaked out. They were wondering, who is going to be subject to this $100,000 fee? When is it going to go into effect? And the list of questions was mounting. So with that quick intro, I want to give you a bit of context about what the H1B visa is and why this presidential proclamation was enacted in the first place. So the H1B visa is a temporary non-immigrant visa which allows a U.S. employer to sponsor a foreign worker to work within a specialty occupation for the U.S. employer. So basically, this is an immigration vehicle which allows a U.S. employer to bring on a foreign worker to work in a specialty occupation. And the intent behind the program is to have a way for U.S. employers to source talent from abroad when they're having challenges finding qualified talent from within the United States. Now, opponents of the H-1B visa, some of whom are prominent voices within the Trump administration, have a view that the H-1B visa is oftentimes used by U.S. employers to source lower wage workers from abroad to essentially find a loophole to have access to lower cost talent than what they can find within the United States. Now, the Trump administration has a policy interest in protecting U.S. workers. So this $100,000 fee was enacted to create a circumstance by which U.S. employers would think twice before utilizing H-1B, and for creating a scenario where if a U.S. employer was to utilize the H-1B visa program, it would genuinely be to source talent for specialty occupations that they cannot find within the United States. And the intent was that this fee would eliminate the incentive to bring on foreign workers based on an interest in sourcing lower cost talent. So with that overview, I want to get into some recent updates that were announced and clarified by USCIS regarding this new fee. Now, this is where we have some very good news to report on. USCIS has recently clarified that applicants for an H-1B change of status would not be subject to the $100,000 fee, that they would be exempt from this new $100,000 fee. This is a major clarification, and for those that are in favor of the H-1B visa, this is very good news. So again, in many cases, applicants for an H-1B change of status will be exempt from the $100,000 fee. You might be asking, what's a change of status and why is this important? Well, a change of status is when somebody is lawfully present in the United States in some sort of a valid non-immigrant status. For example, if they're in the United States on an F1 student visa, lawfully maintaining their status, then in some cases, that person can apply for a change of status to change their status from F1 to another non-immigrant visa status. So in the example of today's video, which is the H-1B visa, if somebody is lawfully present in the United States under an F1 visa and they want to change their status from F1 to H1B, in certain cases they can do so by filing a change of status petition from F1 to H1B. Now, what you should know is that this is a very common avenue for U.S. employers to bring on H1B workers. And the common scenario is that somebody will come to the United States through the F1 visa to attend an educational program from within the United States. In many cases, as part of that F1 visa, the individual can qualify for OPT, which is a form of employment authorization that allows the F1 visa student to work in the United States for a U.S. employer. So in many instances, somebody will come to the United States on an F1 visa, begin to work for a U.S. employer under their OPT. That U.S. employer will develop a working relationship with that F1 student who's working for them under the OPT, and later decide to sponsor them under an H1B. Now, based on the clarification that was recently issued by USCIS, as I mentioned, people that are applying for a change of status from within the United States, such as a change of status from F1 to H1B, will not be subject to this new $100,000 H1B fee. Again, this is major good news for all that are in favor of the H1B visa. So you might be wondering, who is subject to this increased fee? Well, I have the recent clarification from USCIS, and I'm going to read it to you. So it says here, who is subject to the $100,000 payment? The proclamation applies to new H1B petitions filed at or after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st, 2025, on behalf of beneficiaries who are outside the United States and do not have a valid H1B visa. The proclamation also applies if a petition filed at or after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st, 2025, requests consular notification, port of entry notification, or pre-flight inspection for an alien in the United States. So again, this is going to apply for new H1B petitions that are filed on September 21st or later, and that are filed as consular applications, meaning that the person is not filing a change of status from within the United States. Again, they would be filing either a consular petition requesting a visa abroad, port of entry notification, or pre-flight inspection for an alien in the United States. Again, it goes on to say, as we discussed, if a petition filed at or after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st, 2025, requests a change of status or amendment or extension of stay, the USCIS clarification goes on to say, the proclamation does not apply to any previously issued and currently valid H-1B visas or any petitions submitted prior to 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st, 2025. In addition, the proclamation does not prevent any holder of a current H-1B visa or any alien beneficiary following petition approval from traveling in and out of the United States. And as we discussed earlier, one of the most important parts of this announcement, it says, the proclamation also does not apply to a petition filed at or after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 21st, 2025, that is requesting an amendment, change of status, or extension of stay for an alien inside the United States, where the alien is granted such amendment, change, or extension. And this, I have not yet mentioned this, but also very interesting. It goes on to say right here, further, an alien beneficiary of such petition will not be considered to be subject to the payment if he or she subsequently departs the United States and applies for a visa based on the approved petition and or seeks to re-enter the United States on a current H-1B visa. So that is also a very important point to note. So we've been talking about this idea that those that are validly in the United States that apply for a change of status are exempt from the H-1B visa fee, the new $100,000 fee. However, we contrasted that with those that are outside of the United States that are applying for a new visa and are applying at a consulate for a visa. In those cases, there may be a fee applied, a $100,000 fee. Now, what this segment that I just read clarifies is that if somebody is in the United States, does a change of status, and gets H-1B status, and then later departs and applies for a visa abroad after having secured their H-1B status via the change of status, that individual would similarly be exempt from the H-1B payment when getting their visa from the consulate. Another source of good news for those in favor of the H-1B visa. So now that we've covered all of that, I want to bring your attention to a few more things. If you're somebody that's following the news with H-1B, and you're not subject to the fee, then for you, that's great news. But if you're watching this and it seems that you may be subject to the fee, something that you should know is that there have already been multiple lawsuits filed that are attempting to contest the validity of the enactment of this new fee. And so it's going to be very important to stay on top of and to closely follow that litigation, because it's very likely that these lawsuits are going to immediately seek injunctive relief, at least on a temporary basis, stop this proclamation from going into effect, citing the harms to potential applicants for H1B visas. So again, as we speak, there are already multiple lawsuits that have been filed against enforcement of this $100,000 payment. And it's going to be very important to closely monitor these lawsuits to see how they impact the enforcement of this presidential proclamation. Another thing to be aware of, for those that are impacted by this $100,000 payment, because as you can imagine, for those that are impacted, it will have a very chilling effect on the H1B program. It's understandable that employers are going to be far less likely to pursue an H1B visa for somebody if they have to pay a $100,000 fee. So something that is very likely to occur is that U.S. employers are going to likely look for alternative pathways to bring in their desired workers through an immigration vehicle that doesn't carry such a hefty fee with it. And if I'm speculating, I think that two alternatives that employers are going to begin looking into are the L1 visa and the O1 visa. L1 visa is also termed the intra-company transferee visa, and it allows a U.S. company to bring on a manager or executive or a specialized knowledge worker from a related company, such as a parent company or a subsidiary company or an affiliate company. That's the L1. We have many videos on it. I'm not going to go into too much detail other than to say that I think that U.S. employers are going to see if there are viable pathways to bring in employees under L1 where eligible. Additionally, I cited O1. O1 is a non-immigrant visa for people that have an extraordinary ability. And the way that one has to document their extraordinary ability is to satisfy various prongs. And I believe that U.S. employers and foreign workers that are subject to this new fee are going to look for avenues to explore O1 as a means of avoiding H1B. And additionally, I think that people are going to look for avenues to circumvent non-immigrant visas altogether and explore eligibility for immigrant visas if they're subject to the H1B fee as well. That's just what I speculate as I see how these various immigration reforms are unfolding. And lastly, for those that are not subject to this H1B fee, that are proceeding with H1Bs, for example, that group of people that we spoke about earlier, individuals that are applying for an H1B change of status, many of them may actually be very happy with the enactment of the $100,000 payment because it may have the effect of removing an entire pool of applicants from the H1B visa lottery. Now, many H1B applicants are subject to the H1B lottery, because essentially there has historically been far more demand than supply of these visas. So I can imagine that another source of good news for many people that are not subject to the H1B fee is that they're likely thinking, wow, it seems that there's going to be a lot of people that once were going to pursue an H1B visa that are no longer going to seek the H1B visa. And that means that my chances of getting selected in the lottery are that much better. All that to say that it's going to be very interesting to see how the next several weeks and months unfold and what impact this has on the H1B visa overall and what effect this has on the immigration system overall. That was just an update for you along with some impressions that I had. I hope you got some good value from this video as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, smash that thumbs up button so that YouTube knows to share this video with a wider audience. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and I'll see you on the next video.